Welcome to Leadership, the secret sauce, where extraordinary coaches and leaders reveal what makes them exceptional. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. Together, let's discover our guest's secret sauce. Today's episode is brought to you by Character Matters Coaching and Consulting. At Character Matters, we believe great leadership isn't just about results. It's about who you become along the way. From career transitions to team building, we help leaders unlock clarity, build resilience, and lead authentically. Because when character grows, impact follows. Visit charactermatterscoaching.com. Today's episode is supported completely unofficially by a community we deeply believe in, the International Coaching Federation's Coaching in Organizations. If you're building or leading an internal coaching program, this is where your people find their people. It's a space to swap real stories, sharpen your craft, and stay connected to what's emerging in our field. If you haven't joined yet, take a moment to sign up and plug into the conversations shaping the future of organizational coaching. Your community is waiting, and they're ready to learn with you. Go to coachingfederation.org/coaching-in-organizations-inquiry to get started. All right, welcome. And before we sort of jump right into our episode, we're going to sit down with Tom Epperson this afternoon to uncover his secret sauce of leadership and coaching. We're going to get into his story, his challenges, maybe even the way that he sees things, maybe a little different than some of our audience has heard. We really appreciate that if you stick around and listen. Of course, we would love for you to follow us, whether that's whatever platform that you're listening on. You're always welcome to provide us some feedback around what you heard. Anyway, as we get started, Dave, what are your thoughts here this morning?
Welcome, Tom. I wanted to start off with an energy check-in on a scale from 1 low to 10 high. Where are you and what has you at that energy level?
I'm at a 7. So if I think about my baseline is probably close to a 7, I'm close to my baseline.
Close to the baseline. All right. And Matt, how about you?
Okay, Dave, this is a little self-serving, but I'll say it. I'm maybe a 9.5. Right before this, I'm making some plans. For those of you who know me on my podcast, know that I go to Zimbabwe and do some leadership training for some people out there. So I got together with the other couple that I'm traveling with, and we kind of went through it, and I'm pretty excited. So that's in March. So
that is incredibly exciting, and I have nothing to compare. I am at an 8. After recovering from my multiple birthday wishes yesterday. So I'm feeling good and I have a little bit of caffeine to juice me up. So Tom, first question, you're walking onto stage and they're playing a walk-on song and you're going on stage to accept an award. What's your walk-on song and what's the award that you're accepting?
Ooh, great question. So my walk-on song is Jump Around. So anything that's high energy, get in your face, have a great time while we're here, be nice but don't take any junk is sort of the feeling that I have as I walk on stage. And many, many years ago, especially when I was young at being a speaker and facilitator and a coach, I had to learn how to be confident and how to walk in like I own the place. Otherwise, at 20 some years old, there was no chance of them listening to me. So I at least had to fake it till I made it. So that walking in like I own the place in a song like Jump Around really brings that out. And if I was going to accept an award, it'd probably be a Reformed Jerk Award. So, or a award of biggest change in self-awareness.
Ooh.
All right. Okay, Tom. Well, let's just get into it. We better figure out. Okay, so maybe share a little bit of your coach's journey. How did that happen?
Yeah. So it's funny. I'd have to go kind of all the way back to kind of what the sort of seeds were in how I ultimately became a coach and facilitator. And it really started when I was a kid. So, home, I grew up in a really rural part of Virginia. Everyone in the county is poor, including us. And mom's a drug addict, so she isn't super present. Dad's working all the time. And my grandparents decided to get really involved in our lives. And, my first job was at 10 years old, making $1 an hour, working 50 hours a week. And grew up, working on our family farm, working in a sawmill, working in a construction business. By 11 and a half, I'm an unlicensed commercial electrician, all kinds of great stuff like that. And then I had my first supervisor job by the time I was about 11 and a half or 12, because my grandfather decided that I was old enough and mature enough to be in charge. And so I had 2 grown men working for me at the time, one of whom was sort of like the town drunk. So come in lit on a Monday, go home lit on a Thursday. And he was my star performer. And my other guy that was working with me would later shot his wife and his wife's boyfriend. Right. So that was really sort of the first opportunity I had to really kind of lead and supervise people. And at the same time, I was supposed to be running herd on my brothers and their friends and everybody who would show up randomly to work on these construction sites where we were building buildings and floating concrete and framing buildings and doing the whole thing. So then fast forward, by the time I was in 8th grade, I was getting in fights every day, so just rough and tumble sort of environment. And I was pretty much on the receiving end of those fights. Like, I was not the hero of that story. Like, I'm the guy who's on the ground. And I got tired of doing that. And I started looking for these ways of avoiding the fights. And so I was trying to, I'd sit in the front of the bus with all the little kids around me for cover, and that didn't quite work out. And then lo and behold, one of my friends needed tutoring. And so I'm like, I've never tutored before. I could do that. And so I go home with him, and his mom cooks us dinner, and he's got cable and a satellite dish, and I don't get in a fight that day. And I'm like, this is the path for me. And so I started tutoring kids. And I did that sort of throughout high school. And then fast forward, I become a percussion instructor. So I teach kids how to play drums. So slowly learning that, oh yeah, maybe I can do this teaching thing. And then fast forward, one of my early jobs was in HR and safety, right? And a big component of that job was training. And so I ended up beginning to learn how to train, got educated, got my master's in human resource development, started coaching in 2001. So I've been doing that for many years now. And then ever since, I've been in the people business. So it's been a really satisfying, rewarding, frustrating, crazy, sort of challenging journey that I've been on. So,
Tom, how would you describe your secret sauce, and where along that journey did you realize it?
So for me, I think part of my secret sauce is this high levels of adaptability. Like, you can throw me into any situation, you could throw me into any industry, you could throw me into any different organization, and I'm going to find my footing pretty quickly and be able to learn fast and then kind of ultimately adapt to that situation. So combine that with this ridiculous sort of feeling of confidence that I bring, that really came from my grandfather believing me and came from me having to figure things out and stand on my own 2 feet. Allows me to just parachute into places and be really comfortable really fast and feel like I can add value and I can have an impact no matter where you send me. It's not always true. It doesn't always work out. There's a real downside to that level, that kind of secret sauce. But it's really what has made me successful, I think.
If somebody followed you around for a week and they were to see you doing your work, parachuting in and out and using your secret sauce, what would they say?
Yeah. So they would see me going from thing to thing to thing to thing. I try and have boundaries around things like travel, and boundaries about how many meetings I have during the day and those kinds of things, and so I don't want to have any more than 5 meetings in one day. Today, randomly, I have 8 different meetings, and so I'm wired to go from one meeting to another meeting to another meeting to another meeting and just go. And then with travel, especially in previous versions of myself, I would be flying in and out of places 40 weeks out of 52, and in countless Hampton Inns, all over the United States. And people get really excited when you travel like that. And they say, oh, what's Austin like? Or what's it like to be in New York City and then Connecticut and then fly down to Miami? And I'm like, a business park in Connecticut looks just like a business park in Austin, looks just like a business park here in Richmond, Virginia, where I live. And so they would see some very unsexy hotel rooms and some very unsexy business parks. And they would see me going from thing to thing to thing. And they would see me bring a lot of energy to the dance, and then occasionally like tilting over and, maybe saying the wrong thing or getting hijacked or not thinking deeply enough or going too fast or being too independent or too overly responsible. So they would see a mix of where I'm awesome and where I completely am terrible.
Wow. Okay. You know what, Tom, you have sparked a lot of thoughts in me just in terms of, so you're kind of giving us a behind the scenes look around what does it look like, coach, facilitator. That's the, can you share the first time that you were experiencing this sort of fast pace and just it, at the end of the day, you're like, oh, what did I do? Or what did I say? What do you do with that?
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. It was interesting sort of early in my career. So I'm in my 20s, put in front of a group of kind of cynical and jaded 35 to 55 and 65-year-olds. And they've got to listen to me because I'm there to teach them something. And when you've got an audience that is completely disinterested and you've got no experience to lean on, and yet you're responsible for teaching them, you've got to figure out, how do I get their attention? How do I keep them hooked? How do I build some kind of legitimacy? How do I build some kind of credibility? How do I keep this thing moving and ultimately achieve whatever goal we're there to set out? And so early on in my career, it was a lot of just walking into these very unfriendly rooms and then trying to get a job done. And then being thick-skinned enough to let their disdain or their disbelief or even sometimes their straight up insults bounce off of me. And what was funny at the time was I literally thought of myself as a laid-back surfer dude. I thought I was easygoing. I thought I rode the waves without a care in the world. I thought I must just be this pure joy to work with because I was so laid back. And then I was given the gift of feedback again and again and again and again. And I realized that I am not a surfer. I am a shark. So I'm thick-skinned. I'm incredibly task-focused. I'm disinterested in how other people feel. I'm not terribly sensitive to their feelings and emotion at any given moment. I'm disinterested in what they have to say. If you get between me and a task that I feel like needs to get done, I might eat you. And that was the feedback that I got at 22 and 23 and 24 years old. And so I have literally spent, I'm 50 now, so I have spent the past 25 or 30 years literally trying to care about other people, empathize with them, understand how they're feeling, develop my listening skills, leave them feeling heard, trying to find ways to both recognize that, my brain's really fast and my IQ is quick. And unfortunately, my EQ, my emotional intelligence, is really slow and it's not very high. And so I have to spend sort of time and energy really checking in both with other people and paying a lot of attention and spending a lot of energy focusing on them and also on myself, because I don't know how I feel at any one given moment. Especially I know if I'm mad, I know if I'm happy, but really dialing into more complicated emotions like shame or regret or ennui or whatever it might be, and really understanding kind of how I'm feeling at any given moment has been a real part of my journey over the past several years.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let me ask you this, because I think you have a unique sort of group of people that you will typically work with is a lot of nonprofits, or you can tell us what are some of the, what do you think sort of nonprofit leaders, what would really help nonprofit leaders start and stop doing, at least at this point in time? Where are they with technology? We get a lot of questions about, coaching and AI, but I would imagine on the corporate side, we hear a lot of, AI being the buzzword, but where is it with the nonprofit leaders, and How do you coach them?
Yeah. And you guys may hate this answer. So, kind of in my experience, and it's been in for-profits, nonprofits, government agencies, state agencies, everything from, high-end retail to technology companies to startups to 150-year-old businesses, right? And these kind of teeny tiny nonprofits where it's one person trying to raise money, and beg, borrowing, and stealing every resource they can, to these massive nonprofits like YMCA's and Goodwills. And in my experience, there really isn't a difference, because at the end of the day, we're all in the people business. So the same challenges of someone who's trying to run a $100 million Goodwill are the same challenges that someone who's trying to run a $25 million retail business, or someone who's trying to get a department in a government agency like the DOD or the Department of the Interior, trying to get all their people on the same page, are the same challenges that, the three of us have in running consulting practices. And so just recognizing the fact that we're all people, right? And we're all messy works in progress, and that being a people is hard. And that really brings a lot of empathy to all these different challenges that people face. What's unique about nonprofits is they tend to be mission driven. So people tend to come for the mission. They come for the inspiration. They're motivated because they want to make a difference. And then they slowly get burned out, and then they leave because the mission wasn't enough to sustain them, because nonprofits typically don't have the same kind of resources that for-profits do. So resources for people, resources for training, resources for different opportunities, growth. And so in the nonprofit world, part of the work for senior leaders is, how do you rediscover what sustains you? Same thing goes for teachers in public school systems. They get in, they get sort of pressure from parents, they get pressure from the school board, they get pressure from the states, and then they get upward pressure from their students, and they kind of get squozen in the middle. Nonprofits are sort of in that same boat. They've got these missions where there's never enough money or enough volunteers or enough resources. And so they get squozen by their boards, and they get squozen by the need. And the person who gets left out, much like teachers, is them. So how can they rediscover that sense of purpose and mission, and then do some things that feel inherently selfish, but are really about, how can I keep myself running? How can I put energy back in my tank and into my battery so that I can be sustainable, so I can go out and make a difference?
What happens when jump around hits jump around, and you're talking to an executive that needs to do those things, like needs to rediscover, but they're jumping around? Like, what would it look like for you as a coach to get them to rediscover their purpose mission?
Dave, I know it's going to be hard to believe, but I'm not everybody's cup of tea. So just kind of recognizing that I'm not a good fit for everybody. That's okay. But some of my favorite clients are just really these messy, high energy, slightly ADHD senior leaders who they go from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, and they're moving really quickly, and they're changing their mind on a dime, and really trying to both match their energy and then kind of slowly keep them focused on what it is they really want to accomplish. And I think part of our job as coaches is if you go through sort of certified coaching programs, you're really taught one way. You're taught, especially as you get into more senior coaching roles, you're taught this very sort of calm, safe space, deeply curious approach, where your really only tool is to help ask a question that unlocks the answers from within. And if you've got a high energy, slightly ADHD CEO who's going bang, 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 boy, they're going to eat you alive, right? And so as a coach, we've got to figure out, all right, how do I adapt? How can I be authentic with skill? So how can I adapt to this client who really, really, really needs this work, and yet find a way to connect with them in kind of that sort of A to B to Z to X approach to the world. So,
yeah.
And it doesn't always work out, but we keep trying.
Tom, one of the conversations we've had outside of this is really around sort of getting those leaders to stop and look within. What would you say, like, the role of like your own journey just of, what you described and those leaders, how, like, how do you do that? Like, hey, like, do they really understand like this idea around your own personal self-awareness about whatever, you know, whatever bull in the china shop that has been successful? It's very possible it's not going to get them to where they want to go. How do you deal with that as when I know there are plenty of leaders that have gotten a tremendous amount out of continuing to be that bull, and the wreckage is incredible. How do you do that? How do you match that with them,
Yeah.
or explain it, or ask them, or get them
I
to
mean,
open up?
so you guys know as well as I do, we can't want it more than they do.
Yeah.
And we always know with clients, when you get to the point where you want it more than they do, that's when we become really ineffective. And so really trying to build that commitment towards growth, build that commitment towards transformation, really help them see what that path could look like. Because chances are when they come to us, very, 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 very few of our clients come and say, you know what, I am great. I just want to be a little bit greater. They tend to come to us and say, I have this really big problem and I've tried a bunch of different things to solve it. Can you help? Right? Or they're surrounded by people who say, you are a really big problem. You really need to get some help. And so we tend not to come in when things are awesome. We tend to come in when things are broken, or a crisis, or a challenge, or, whatever it is. Like, I don't have a successor, or my top folks are leaving, or, my kids and my family are looking at me like I'm not a great dad, or I'm not a great husband, or I'm not a great wife, or I'm not a great mom. And I feel this sense of guilt, but I also feel like I've got to go get this thing done. And so really helping them tap into that sense of self-motivation and kind of why they want to do this work in the first place, and then keep that fire burning, I think is important. Mm-hmm. I think another part that's important is just chemistry. Like, we're not all the right fit for all the different clients in the world. As adaptable as I am, and as adaptable as you guys are in a million different settings, we're not always the right person, or we're not the right person at the right time. So it's a little bit of timing. It's a little bit of chemistry. It's got to be some skill from us. And then I think maybe the last piece, going back to adaptability, is being able to have enough tools in our toolkit. They allow us to say, okay, the hammer's not working, so let me try the crescent wrench. The crescent wrench isn't working, so let me try the pry bar. The pry bar's not working, so let me try this rivet or this nail gun. And so being able, as in our own practices, to be highly adaptable and use the right tool for the job. If you've got the kind of client who they're never going to write in a journal no matter what you do, right? They're not going to reflect that way in any way, shape, or form. Well, find another way to help them reflect. Like, hey, go have 3 conversations and ask this question, right? Or if we're in the business of feedback, so we give the gift of feedback often. With some of these executives, feedback is the last thing they're interested in and the last thing that they get from their folks. And sometimes it's our job as a coach, not just to ask questions, but to put our consulting hat on, or to put on our sort of, feedback in chief hat on, and really come in and take the feedback 2x4 and give them a nice swing. And then when they don't hear that one, you get another feedback 2x4. And by the time you've broken 3 or 4 of those 2x4s over them, they're like, hey, wait a second. Do you mean me? Yes, I mean you. And so having some courage in our practice is really important. Saying the hard stuff, holding the mirror up and helping people see themselves clearly. Like, those are all different tools in our toolkit. And again, it's about, what does this person really need from me? And then maybe the last piece is, it's a lonely, lonely job as a senior executive. It's hard. It's high pressure. They're carrying a lot of weight on their shoulders. And oftentimes they're by themselves. And they have no sort of non-judgmental space to really talk about what they're scared about, or talk about how they feel, or talk about what they're frustrated about. And sometimes we just got to be there and just be a friend to them, or a partner, or just listen. That's one of the greatest gifts we can, is just show up.
Yeah. Tom, what's as you think about your ideal coach, how would you describe the coach that you would want for yourself?
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a terrible client. Um, so as an ideal coach for me, and I've had many coaches and have loved some of them dearly and have moved on from others at times. I think first of all, I want them to be better than I am, right? Like I want them to have a high level of skill. I want them not to put up with my foolishness and my shenanigans. When I try and verbally or mentally or emotionally jujitsu them, I want them to be better at the jujitsu than I am to help me be accountable and help see myself clearly. Because I'm like everybody else. My brain doesn't want to change. I want to be stuck in the same patterns. All I have is a hammer. Everything looks like a nail. I just want to do the same thing again and again and again and again. And so I need someone who can really help get me in the right arm bar, get me wrapped around myself so that I can actually see myself clearly and do the real work. And for me now, these days is, I don't know about you guys, but I have been over-assessed and out-feedbacked, and I cannot tell you how many 360s I've had and how many personality instruments I've gone through and how many workshops I've attended and how much stuff I've done to work on me and how many retreats and how much meditation and like all the things. And so my work these days is less about, hey, observe and act, observe and act, observe and act, and more about, we got to unpack the bottom of this iceberg that I've built. And we got to get down into the shadow side of the work, and we got to unpack all those beliefs and assumptions, and we got to look at all your core issues, and we got to do that really, 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 really deep, uncomfortable work that most of us are pretty good at ignoring. So for me, the ideal coach can out jujitsu me and then can go really, really deep with me and isn't afraid to be a quasi-therapist, or maybe even preferably someone who is a therapist to like help me unpack a bunch of that stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Because I can always figure out, all right, here's how I can go take action and go do something about it. But if I can't see it in the first place, then I'm not going to take action. So.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And I was thinking about what you said in the beginning about getting into those early fights, working for your grandfather. And the way you describe coaching is, it almost feels like you're walking in to get into a scrap, like a coaching scrap. Is that like, what is your mindset as you walk in?
It's funny. I think that's really good feedback, Dave. So what I'm actually feeling, especially for the folks that I'm coaching these days, because my coaching practice, I'm doing less and less coaching. But with the clients that I am coaching, I just tend to go in with a lot of joy. I love really just messy people trying to figure it out. Like, oh, how awesome is that we have the privilege and honor of stepping in and trying to help. My wife often, as I'm leaving for work, she'll say, go save some starfish today. And it goes back to that fable of, the two guys are walking down the shore and there's all of these starfish who've been beached. And, he picks up one out of the thousands and throws it back in the water. And his partner basically says, well, why'd you do that? You can't save all the starfish. No, I can't save all the starfish, but I can save that one. And so that's the mentality that I go in with, is just this joy and love for these clients and this feeling of honor that I can help this one starfish. I can't save all the starfish, but man, maybe I can help this one just a little bit. Mm. So going into my coaching tends to be more of, this is going to be fun. Let's have fun asking hard questions and looking in the mirror together.
Well said. Good question by your wife, by the way.
Yeah.
She's smarter than I am and more talented, and,
Tom, like beyond, like what's some resources that you generally look at? Maybe even like, maybe even share a little bit about, why'd you write the book you wrote? Tell our audience some things that you listen to also, like, is there a podcast that you listen to? Things like that.
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
So a couple of those pieces. So the book writing, I am actually a failed fiction writer. And so when I was young and in school, I was pre-med, so I was going to be a doctor. And then for some reason, I'd always written sort of in middle school and high school. And then early on in college, I decided for some reason that I wanted to be a full-time writer. And that's how I wanted to make my living. Right. And so I started doing all of these shifts to best equip myself to be a writer. And this was before self-publishing or any of that. And so I wrote a bunch of books, and I wrote a bunch of short stories, and I wrote a bunch of poetry. And so the writing piece, I got that. The piece I was terrible at was finding an agent, finding a publisher, and actually getting someone to pay me to write full time. So absolutely failed miserably to do that. But along the way, got into this field and then built my practice and built my skills. And over time, doing the work that we all do, and sort of the writing sort of fell to the wayside. There just wasn't time or space to it. And I'm a dad and I'm a husband, and there was just no extra room. And then in our consulting practice, I felt like I needed to write a business book based on our philosophy and frameworks that would help us to sort of build credibility with our clients, as well as give us real clear focused area on our frameworks, as well as, kind of expand our reach. And so that really was the genesis of our first book, Inner Will, which is all about sort of individual leadership. And then our second book, Values-Based Organizations, is more about kind of how we align culture and strategy. So it's a framework. It's to help build credibility with clients and help expand our reach. So that's how I kind of got back to writing these business books, that I failed as a fiction writer. And so when people are looking for resources, what I would say is everybody's different. It can really easily feel like there's one right way. You've got to journal. You've got to go to meditation retreats. You've got to go alone in the woods and walk through nature and experience your body in a somatic way. Right? Not all of that is going to work for everybody. My recommendations are always, you got to figure out first what works for you and then go get that. So if going to a sports game and being with, your fans and you're screaming your head off, and that's the thing that brings you joy and helps you have community, yeah, go do that. Right. Unless you're a Lions fan, like our family, in which case be very sad and go to games anyway.
All the time.
Every year be sad. And when it comes to sort of our individual reflection and practice, if you're a journaler and that's what unlocks it for you, awesome, do that. If you have a best friend who's a great thought partner who helps you reflect and helps you really look inward, go do that. Use coaches, use mentors. If going to sort of a silent yoga retreat is what really floats your boat and helps you go deep, great, go do that. But if that piece is inaccessible to you for whatever reason, but you find hiking and walking and being in nature and being outdoors is what brings you joy and helps you do the work that you need to do, chase that. So rather than say any one resource or not, I would say do the work first to finding out what puts energy in your tank, and then what helps you learn best, and what settings and environments and people bring out your best, and go spend time and energy in those places. And then maybe the last piece is this leadership and development. It's a really inside out, outside in process. So as clients and as ourselves, we've got to do the internal work, but then we also have to do the external work. We've got to actively lead. We've got to try things out. We've got to go give and get feedback. We've got to go have hard conversations. We've got to use all the tools in our toolkits in active ways with other people. So often we can think about it, but never actually take any action. Whereas the action is what's going to teach us what works and what doesn't. And I would say maybe the last part of our practice should absolutely be go do some stuff. Try all of this stuff out at work, at home, in your community. We very much say leadership is a choice, not a title. And so go make a bunch of leadership choices and then see how it works.
It's great. Dave, what's your reflection?
I was just thinking you're a really good grit partner, like GRIT.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody's willing to get into their own stuff and go through the struggle, because it is a struggle, right? Being a leader at these times, and the challenges, and who better to pick than somebody who's willing to get into a scrap to help fight with you But I say with you because I think you get alongside your client and help them refine their mission, as opposed to before I said fighting. Sometimes it does feel like I'm fighting my clients, but getting alongside is the goal.
You know what, Tom, I really appreciate you sharing all of I would say the behind the scenes, open the kimono. Hey, look, this is what it looks like on the day in, day out, coaching, facilitation, really working it in an organization that's going. The other thing that I caught was, and I remember this from one of the leaders, is she would describe to me the non-romantic parts to the job, and I think that's what I heard in you describing it. Is like, hey, look, this is what it really looks like, and I just appreciate that candor, because I think that happens it happens certainly with me, but it also happens with some of our listeners. They think of something like your job and they go, oh, if I only had that, then I would, have arrived as a coach. If I could just be like, just working it and going to all of these places in 40 weeks out of the year. And doesn't that sound exciting? Well, it could, but there's also some things that are hard about it. And so that's what I heard. And I just really, I appreciate your willingness to kind of put it out there and say, hey, look, this is what it looks like. I think if some of our listeners were wondering, hey, look, this is what it looks like, you would be willing to share that with them. And at least you shared it with us. And so I really appreciate that. So.
Well, guys, I really appreciate the questions. It's fun. I love this. I feel like I'm taking away some feedback, just in helping me reflect on sort of that combative language, or the aggro, overly aggressive sort of let's get in a fight and let's wrestle to the ground. It probably is a reflection of me, surely. So I really appreciate you guys holding up the mirror and helping me see myself a little more clearly. So thank you.
Hey, Tom, what's the best way for our audience to get a hold of you, to connect with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, the easiest way is just to come to our website, innerwill.org, INNERWILL.org. We are a nonprofit, and all that means is we work with for-profits. We take any money we make there to help cover our costs, and that allows us to do reduced rate or free work for nonprofits. Mm-hmm. So basically, with my team and I, we've got to break even and have an impact. And as long as we do those two things, then everything is right in the world. So innerwill.org.
Yeah. And they can find you on LinkedIn, right? That's, that would be another place. Anyway, thanks, Tom. We do appreciate your spending the time with us. It was really good to hear your story. Really, I relate to so many parts of it. And just to also appreciate your energy. So
thanks, man.
Yeah. All right. Until next time, have a great day. That's a wrap on today's episode. Big thanks to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting. If you're ready to unlock your leadership potential and make the impact you're meant to make, visit charactermatterscoaching.com and connect with Matt about transforming your team or organization. If this conversation sparks something for you, share it with a fellow leader who needs to hear it. And don't forget, all of today's resources are waiting for you in the show notes. Until next time, keep discovering your secret sauce.